Section 8 tenants, should you have them? Pros and cons. What are they like and what are the processes? We'll find out and we'll talk about this in this episode of podcast. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Sam Kwak, one of the Kwak Brothers, real estate investor. And before we go on to this podcast, I want to take a moment to thank you guys for all those Kwak Brothers fans out there. We have 13,000 subscribers as of this week. And I just want to take a moment and saying thank you for supporting us, to subscribe to our podcast and to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I want to say thank you, and I appreciate you guys, love you guys for the support. Now, the second thing that I want to kind of cover before we move on to the main topic of this podcast is every podcast episode, I do want to mention and recommend a book that helped me and my business to grow. So this episode, we're going to have this book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. So one thing that I took away from this book is that if you want to systemize your business, right, somewhat automate your real estate investment business or an existing business that you may have, this is a phenomenal principle focused book that will show you why you want to start leveraging other people in your business so that you're not working in your business, you're working on your business. So there's a difference there, and you'll understand why. The link to purchase this book is right in the description box below. I left an Amazon link, so you can just go ahead and click on the Amazon link, check it out, buy the book. I strongly recommend it when it comes to building your business, very much so. So left the link below, so you don't have to look for it on Amazon. Go ahead and click on the link, and I highly recommend that you purchase the book. You'll love it. The third thing I want to really cover as an announcement is that starting next week, we are going to allow live audience in our podcast. So what that means is this is going to be the last, hopefully one of the last, to have me just talking at you, right? So we're going to have a couple people come on, average folks that want to get into real estate investing. We'll have them on board starting next week. In our next week's podcast, we're going to have live audience. We're going to have conversations, discussions about current events, what the market's doing, maybe, questions about deals. We're going to talk about those starting next week, and we're going to get some little bit of a makeover in our set. So you'll see some differences starting next week. We're really trying to amp up our podcast to get you guys as much value as possible in our podcast. So let's talk about our main topic today is about Section 8 tenants, right? There seems to be a lot of division amongst people who are for Section 8 and who are against. Now, I'm not talking political or the whole idea of subsidies, but I'm talking about, should you do it as a business model, right? Is there money to be made in Section 8? Now, I will tell you, people who are for Section 8 and people who are against Section 8 as a business model and rental property business, they are both right and wrong. And the reason why I say that is a lot of times the real estate investing strategy and the type of tenants that you want to deal with has more to do with who you are than what is really profitable, right? For example, I am not the one to go buy seller finance notes, right? I just don't see my passion being there. I mean, who knows? It may change. But in my lifestyle, my personality, my strength, I just don't see me doing seller finance notes, right? Nor do I see myself doing tax deeds, right? So my strategy primarily has been fix and flip, buy and hold. That's pretty much it, right? Fix and flip for some massive income and buy and hold for steady cash flow for long periods of time. So same thing with Section 8, right? Inside the buy and hold rental market, rental business model, we do have niche, right? The type of customers that you want to serve. Because after all, tenants are your customers, right? They're paying rent to you every month and they get to live in your property. So you have to kind of think of that. Who are my tenants that I can work with the best, right? Even if you have a property management company, you're going to deal with some of the problems that come with some of these tenants. So Section 8 tenants versus your standard market tenants, you're going to have noticeable differences as far as the challenge that may come on both sides. Now, I will tell you, just because they're Section 8 or market tenants doesn't mean that you're going to eliminate problems. You're going to have problems and challenges on both sides of tenant spectrums. So Section 8 is going to have their own problem. Market tenants are going to have their own problem. It really depends on what type of problems you want to have, right? And depending on your personality, strength, weakness, again, you're going to want to, you're going to prefer to have one problem or the other. So I'm speaking from the perspective that I've done both Section 8 and market, which majority of my tenants are market rent tenants, ordinary tenants that are just applying without Section 8. But I can tell you that there's a noticeable difference. First thing and foremost, and by the way, I'm speaking from my experience and opinion, I do notice that Section 8 tenants, I guess I'll talk about the cons first. Section 8 tenants, you'll typically deal with individuals that are going to give you some maintenance issues, okay? They may be there for a long time, or they may not be, but when they move out, boy, oh boy, most of the time, right? Not all the time, but most of the time, I'm dealing with some maintenance challenges, right? The carpet's all dirty, the walls, filled with, is crazy with stain. They may take your appliance. Okay, I've had that before. Someone took my stove from my rental property. You may have some issues along cosmetics, wear and tear, much more expedited than your standard market tenant. Again, I'm not trying to generalize, but that's what I've seen based on my experience from Section 8. So typically, you're going to deal with maintenance issues a lot more than your market tenants. Also, the type of problems you're going to have is going to be different. So sometimes you may have cops show up at the Section 8, and again, not trying to generalize, not trying to discriminate or politicize this podcast. But I've seen more of the Section 8 individuals have issues with drugs, right? Cops show up because apparently, allegedly there's drug issues. Someone selling drug from my property. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. So we have to get that may be something that you have to deal with, right, as a potential problem in your Section 8. Now, again, some of you guys who have some experience in Section 8 may see something different. You guys may have a different experience with Section 8. For me, that's what I'm noticing. Now, another thing that you have to understand about Section 8 is that in some markets and in some parts of the country, tenants may actually have to pay a portion of the rent, right? So let's say the rent is $1,000 a month, right? Section 8 may cover $800 of that, and the tenant may have to pay $200. So that also could be an issue where the tenant doesn't want to pay their portion of, let's say, in this case, $200 a month. So now you're lagging behind. Excuse me, you're lagging behind as far as how much rent you're receiving, right? That might be an issue, right? Where a Section 8 tenant may not be used to paying their portion of the rent. Now, all of a sudden, they may have to because of some changes, or they may have to from the beginning. I guess some of the pros, let's talk about pros. Let's be positive, right? Some of the pros about Section 8 is that you're going to get a lot of consistency, right? You're not going to see much like the market tenant side. You're going to see more consistent, especially if Section 8 is covering the entire amount of the rent every month. But like I said, that is being compensated for the fact that you're going to have maintenance issues. So you're not going to have much of a vacancy issue generally. So that's that. Another pro is that Section 8 rent typically tends to be a little bit higher than your market rent. Now, this depends heavily on your market. I'm, again, generalizing here. But generally speaking, Section 8 tenants or Section 8 rents are typically higher than those typically you'll get off the just standard market. So that's pretty much what I know from my experience. There's a process for Section 8. And what I do recommend, guys, is take some of these Section 8 class programs for landlords. There are landlord classes. If you're in an urban area, especially if you have a good amount of population in your town, in the town of your rental properties, I highly recommend going through the HUD, right, Housing and Urban Development, and take some of the classes that they're offering about Section 8. It's really great. You get to understand how people get their vouchers. And you may also want to check out some of the other YouTube videos about Section 8 from the state or the county that you're working with. So it gives you a really good idea as far as how tenants get their Section 8 in their status in the first place. How do they get their voucher? What are some of the things that they do to lose the vouchers, right? Just letting you know. That's another thing, I guess, as a pro. If the tenants act out, if the tenants don't behave, in a sense that they don't pay rent or they're causing major problems, you can actually complain, and the tenants may lose their voucher to be able to use Section 8, right? Which is not good for them. They probably want that. So that's that. With the market tenants, let's talk about the market tenants. You're going to get problems in a very varying degree. If you work with A-plus tenants, A-plus class tenants, right, higher end luxury apartments, let's say, you're going to have problems too. Okay, just because you're renting out a luxury apartment, high-end rent, doesn't mean that your problems are going to go away. Typical problems that you're going to see in a high luxury, high-class apartments, where you and I might see as a minuscule problem or a problem that can be solved relatively quick. A lot of these A-plus luxury tenants may see that as a problem, right? They're used to having that luxury experience, so you're going to have to be more service-oriented as far as those A-plus, B-plus tenants, where they're going to expect a lot more from you, right? They're going to want you to take care of every little things. So going back to the whole conversation of your strengths, weaknesses, and personality, you have to determine whether you want to go with Section 8 or you want to go to the far end of the spectrum of dealing with high-end luxury tenants. There are no right or wrong. You're gonna deal with problems in either spectrum, but it really comes down to the question: do you want to deal with one problem or the other? Right? Do you want to deal with this challenge of having consistent maintenance, or do you want to be dealing with problems where you're gonna have to take care of little things every now and then, right? So it's ultimately up to you. Ultimately up to you. So if you guys want to learn more about yourself, I'd say do some soul seeking, right? Take some personality tests. Are you an analytical or big picture? So kind of getting to know yourself is a big step. Understanding how you fit in the real estate investing business, right? What sort of customers should you be working with? Because if you work with the wrong customers, for you at least, you're going to have miserable time, and you're going to think that real estate investing is terrible, right? It's going to be horrible. You don't want that, right? We're all in this business knowing that we want to create passive income and wanting to be successful at it and make a lot of money, which I hope you guys do. So guys, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast, this episode of the podcast. If you guys have any questions, drop them down below in our comment section. And I will see you guys in the next podcast episode. Well, you're at the end of the podcast episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. That means you like us and you love us. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out some of these other videos that we have about real estate investing. If you don't subscribe, that means we're going to starve to death and we're not going to make more videos. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can keep eating ourselves and provide you guys more awesome real estate content. All right, stick around. See you guys.